My ex-wife, Amanda, is 36, and I'm 37. We met in our early 20s, both working on the same farm. It wasn't long before we started dating, and 2 years later we got married. Fast forward 3 more years and we had 2 daughters, now 9 and 7 years old. The second pregnancy wasn't planned, and Amanda wasn't thrilled about it. I told her I'd support whatever decision she made because the last thing I wanted was for her to feel forced into something she wasn't ready for. Ultimately, she decided to go through with it. After our first daughter was born, things were great. We loved each other the best we could and worked as a team. But everything shifted when Amanda got pregnant the second time. She became irritable, quick to snap at me or our older daughter over the smallest things. At first, I chalked it up to hormones and tried to be patient, thinking it would pass. Didn't. If anything, it got worse. My daughter and I learned to tiptoe around her mood swings, doing whatever we could to avoid setting her off. Before the second pregnancy, Amanda had quit her job by choice after our first child was born. She stayed home as the primary caregiver while I worked full-time. I picked up as many household chores as I could to make things easier for her, even after long, exhausting days at work. When Amanda got pregnant with our second child, she insisted we hire a housekeeper. She said she was too tired to manage the house and kids. It wasn't exactly in our budget. My income at the time wasn't great, but I agreed because I didn't want to add to her stress during the pregnancy. I figured it was a temporary solution, and once the baby was born, Amanda would recover and resume her role at home. But months after our youngest daughter arrived, nothing changed. Amanda wasn't just tired. She was completely disengaged. She'd spend her days watching TV and barely interacted with the kids. On the rare occasion they went to the park, it was because she paid a neighbor to take them. Meanwhile, I was working my tail off to cover the bills, the housekeeper's salary, and save for our daughter's futures. But saving became nearly impossible with Amanda refusing to lift a finger. By the time our youngest was 6 months old, I'd reached my breaking point. I needed to talk to Amanda, so I arranged for my parents to watch the kids for the day. I sat her down and explained how much I was struggling. I told her I understood she was tired from the pregnancies, but I needed her to step up. Keeping the housekeeper full-time wasn't financially sustainable, and we needed to renegotiate the arrangement so I could save money for the family. Amanda's response was instant and sharp. She flat out refused, claiming she was too busy with the kids to take on anything else. Then she turned it on me, saying I needed to make more money instead of blaming her for our financial problems. I tried reasoning with her, reminding her that I was already doing everything I could to provide for us. I even brought up how little attention she gave the kids, something our housekeeper had mentioned once, about them sitting in front of the TV all day watching trashy reality shows. Big mistake. Amanda exploded, accusing me of spying on her through the housekeeper. What followed was a full-blown tirade. She yelled that I had no right to pressure her into doing chores, claiming I did nothing but sit at my desk all day while she had to manage everything. She said it was my fault we couldn't afford a housekeeper and that, as the man of the house, I should be ashamed to ask her for help. The whole thing felt absurd, like she was just grasping at straws to justify her behavior. It didn't matter how calmly I tried to explain myself. Amanda was determined to prove I was the problem. The fight escalated to a point I never imagined. Amanda called me a loser, claiming I couldn't afford a woman like her. Her words hit me hard, and in my frustration, I snapped back, calling her a lazy cow and saying she'd failed as a mother because our oldest daughter was scared of her, and now she was failing as a wife too. That struck a nerve. I saw the pain in her eyes just before she pushed me, hard. I stumbled back, losing my balance, and fell onto the coffee table. The glass shattered beneath me, and I ended up with cuts and bruises all over my back. Amanda immediately started crying, apologizing profusely, but the damage was done. I had to be rushed to the hospital. Luckily, my injuries were superficial, but the whole incident shook me to my core. On the way home, I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. Not with me, and certainly not with our kids. What if she lost control again? What if next time it wasn't me but one of our daughters who got hurt? I made a decision right then. Amanda had to leave. I asked my parents to take care of the girls while Amanda packed her things. She protested, begged, and promised it wouldn't happen again, but I couldn't take the risk. I almost filed for divorce on the spot, but she pleaded with me to give her another chance. By the end of that week, we reached a compromise. Amanda would move in with her parents and start psychotherapy. I told her that I wouldn't consider letting her come back home unless a specialist assured me she was stable. Deep down, I knew something was wrong with her. Happy people don't act like that. But she seemed genuinely committed to working on herself, and for the sake of our daughters, I decided to hold off on the divorce and give her one more shot. For a while, things seemed to improve. Amanda started seeing a therapist, and I kept in touch with them to stay updated. She was diagnosed with postpartum depression, which apparently explained the aggression and mood swings she hadn't recognized in herself. The incident where she pushed me had been a wake-up call for both of us. Amanda lived with her parents for nearly a year while my parents moved in with me to help care for the girls. We also started seeing a marriage counselor, and for a few months it felt like progress was being made. Amanda was slowly becoming the woman I had fallen in love with again. 6 months in, I even allowed her supervised visits with our daughters. Watching her interact with them, I thought we might actually have a chance to rebuild our family. But just as things seemed to be turning around, Amanda's behavior shifted again. She started skipping our counseling sessions without warning and stopped responding to my texts. Her therapist assured me that she was still improving, which made her sudden distance even more confusing. For almost 3 months, she barely spoke to me. Whenever I asked what was wrong, she just said she needed time. Something felt off, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Against her wishes, I decided to visit her at her parents' house. I'd avoided doing so before because her parents had always blamed me for everything, believing I was the reason Amanda was struggling. Amanda had also specifically asked me not to come, saying it would only cause unnecessary drama. But with her growing distant and disinterested, I had to know what was going on. When I showed up unannounced, I had no idea what to expect. I'd given her space and tried to communicate in every way I could, but now I needed answers. Her avoidance wasn't just about needing time, it was something else entirely. That afternoon, when I showed up at Amanda's parents' house, I fully expected to find her there. But when I knocked on the door, they told me she wasn't home. When I asked where she was, they refused to tell me. Instead, they slammed the door in my face. It wasn't just the action, it was the way they did it, almost with satisfaction. A bad feeling settled in my chest as I stood there, stunned. Desperate for answers, I started calling Amanda right there on their front porch. No response. I tried again, and again. Each time, the phone just rang, and my paranoia grew stronger. Finally, I decided to check the property myself. I knew her parents usually left the kitchen door unlocked, so I made my way around the house. But I didn't even need to sneak in. I spotted Amanda in the backyard. She was sitting on the swing, but she wasn't alone. She was locked in a kiss with a man I didn't recognize. That moment is seared into my memory. It's been years, but I can still see it as clearly as if it happened yesterday. The guy, let's call him Sean, immediately pulled away when he noticed me. By the time Amanda turned around, I was already walking back to my car. She ran after me, calling my name, trying to stop me. I didn't even look at her. When she grabbed my arm, I shoved her away and told her not to touch me. I was in shock, completely numb, and drove home without saying another word. When I got home, I blocked her on everything: phone, social media, email. I didn't want to hear her excuses or explanations. Instead, I told my parents what had happened and asked them to help me find a good lawyer. I didn't see or speak to Amanda again until we met with a mediator to discuss the terms of our divorce. By then, I was emotionally wrecked but too drained to feel anything. I'd become a robot, going through the motions for the sake of my daughters. At that meeting, I learned Amanda was giving up her parental rights. She had decided she didn't want to be part of our lives anymore. She wanted to be with Sean, the guy I'd seen her kissing in the backyard. Apparently, they were childhood friends who had reconnected after she moved back in with her parents. She claimed she had fallen in love with him, and her parents were fully supportive of the relationship. In fact, it turned out her parents had always wanted her to end up with Sean. They were thrilled that Amanda had, in their words, finally chosen herself and her happiness. as if she'd ever considered anyone else in the first place. The divorce process was brutal. Despite cheating on me and abandoning her kids, Amanda still had the audacity to demand alimony. It was absurd, but I fought her tooth and nail. My lawyer and I made sure she walked away with nothing. After all, I'd paid for everything for years while she sat at home watching TV. It's been 5 years since the divorce was finalized, and looking back, those months were some of the hardest of my life. But I had to stay strong for my daughters. My parents were my rock through it all, helping me balance work and parenting. I'll never be able to thank them enough for their support. Today, life is so much better. At the time, the divorce felt like the worst thing that could happen to me, but now I see it as a blessing. We moved to a bigger house, I'm earning more money, and I don't have to spend a dime on anyone but my daughters and myself. My parents live nearby and visit often, my daughters are happy, and I've built a solid group of friends who care about me. For the first time in years, I feel content. I have everything I need, and I'm grateful for the life I've built. Or at least I was content until a few days ago. That's when Amanda showed up again. It was a regular morning, and I was just about to head out for work when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I opened the door cautiously, and there she was. Amanda stood on my doorstep, tears in her eyes, and by her side was a little boy, no more than 3 or 4 years old. I didn't need anyone to tell me. That boy was hers. For a moment, I just stared, trying to process the scene in front of me. Before I could even gather my thoughts, Amanda started crying and said she had come to apologize. She wanted to make things right, to reconnect with me and our daughters, and to give our marriage another chance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After all these years, after everything she'd done, Amanda thought she could waltz back into my life and decide we should be a family again, as if it were entirely up to her. My anger boiled over. I told her we weren't her family anymore. I stopped being her husband the day she cheated on me, and the divorce was just a formality. She had willingly signed away her parental rights, so she had no claim on our daughters. She made her choice, and now she had to live with it. Without another word, I slammed the door in her face. I could hear her crying on the other side, but I ignored it. I was angry, but I held back from yelling or saying anything harsher, mostly because of the little boy. Once everything seemed calm, I left for work and tried to put it out of my mind. I couldn't afford to let her reappearance mess with my head. For the most part, I succeeded in pushing it aside. But when I got home that evening, everything came rushing back. My phone rang, and it was my parents. They weren't happy. They demanded to know why I had chased Amanda away, and said she'd called them in tears after leaving my house. Apparently, they had been the ones to give her my new address. Not only that, but they had also advised her to come see me, claiming it was time to make things right. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They told me Amanda had been planning this for a month. She was divorcing Sean and wanted to come back to me and the girls. My parents thought it was a good idea and believed Amanda deserved another chance, especially because they thought my daughters needed their mother. I was furious. I told them they had no right to forgive Amanda on my behalf or to decide what was best for my daughters. They tried to defend their actions, saying they had helped me through the divorce and still helped care for the girls, so they had a right to weigh in. But I couldn't accept that logic. They're my daughters, I told them, and it's my decision, not yours. We argued. My parents accused me of being selfish and refusing to see what was best for the kids. They claimed they had vetted Amanda thoroughly and were convinced she was a changed person who deserved to be part of the family again. Even when I reminded them that Amanda had willingly given up her parental rights, they brushed it off. They said I was being arrogant, that I was ruining my daughters' lives by denying them the chance to have their mother back. I couldn't believe their audacity. After all the pain Amanda had caused, they wanted me to let her back into my life, and worse, into my daughters' lives. They refused to see how reckless and dangerous their decision was. It's been a few days since that argument, and I've thought about it constantly. But I still believe I made the right choice. Amanda doesn't get to walk back into our lives on her terms. She made her bed, and now she has to lie in it. Does that make me a terrible person? Maybe some people would say yes, but I don't think so. My job is to protect my daughters, and I refuse to let anyone, Amanda included, Put them in harm's way again. Update 1. It's been about a week since Amanda showed up at my door with her son, and I've recently uncovered the full extent of her relationship with my parents. The truth is so gut-wrenching, I don't even know where to start. The betrayal I feel is beyond anything I could have imagined. Not only did my parents give her my new address, but they'd been in contact with her all along. After the divorce, I cut off all communication with Amanda, wanting a clean break for me and my daughters. But my parents didn't. They believed that, sooner or later, Amanda would come to her senses and want to reconnect. Apparently, they communicated with her sporadically, maybe once a month, but even that was enough to make me feel deeply betrayed. They didn't tell me because they thought they were doing the right thing. Here's what I learned. When I filed for divorce, Sean gave Amanda an ultimatum. She could either leave our family and start a new life with him, or she could stay connected to our daughters and fight for custody, but only if she ended her relationship with him. It was a cruel choice, but in the end, Amanda chose Sean. She decided to leave her daughters and start over with him instead of trying to fix the damage she'd done. That was when she reached out to my parents. She told them about the situation, claiming she'd felt cornered by both me and Sean. According to her, if she fought for custody, she'd lose anyway. Between the circumstances of our divorce, her history with anger issues, and the waiver Sean had her sign, the odds were stacked against her. She wouldn't have been able to see the kids regardless. She begged my parents to help her stay in contact with our daughters secretly. Amanda told them she couldn't bear the thought of losing her children entirely and appealed to their sympathy. And somehow she succeeded. My parents, moved by her story, decided to help. They believed they were doing the right thing, keeping a mother in her children's lives, even if it meant going behind my back. Whenever I left the girls at their house, they would secretly invite Amanda over so she could spend time with them. They even bribed my daughters with toys and candy to keep it quiet. When I asked my daughters about their visits, they'd tell me they played with a friend. I thought they meant one of my parents' friends, people I already knew, but it turns out my parents coached them to call Amanda a friend if I ever asked. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Not only had my parents betrayed me, but my daughters had been manipulated into lying to me. Of course, I don't blame the girls, they're just kids who didn't know any better. But it hurts to think about how Amanda and my parents used them to keep this secret. The betrayal stings so deeply because it wasn't just Amanda's actions. It was my own parents' choice to prioritize her over me. They let this deception go on for years, and now I'm left questioning everything. After finding out the truth from my parents, I decided to ask my daughters directly if they had been seeing their mother behind my back. The moment I brought it up, they broke down in tears and told me they couldn't say anything because God would punish them if they did. It was clear that Amanda and my parents had drilled this fear into them, making them believe terrible consequences awaited if they ever told me the truth. That's why they had been so secretive and evasive all this time. Realizing this made me feel like a terrible father. I had trusted my parents implicitly and never thought to dig deeper when my daughters mentioned spending time with a friend. For all I knew, it could have been someone far more dangerous than Amanda, and I would have been completely in the dark. But now, I'm determined to put an end to all of it. I've already filed for restraining orders against Amanda and my parents. I also have written proof of their actions, a letter my parents sent me a few days after our confrontation. They thought the letter would help me understand Amanda's desperation to be a mother while keeping her relationship with Sean intact. They hoped it would make me forgive them. Instead, it only solidified my resolve. The letter painted a picture of Amanda as a victim who had been forced to give up her parental rights to keep Sean's love. They explained how Sean had issued her an ultimatum during the divorce. Either stay with him and leave her family behind, or fight for custody and risk losing everything, including him. According to them, Amanda had felt trapped. She chose Sean and tried to keep her connection with our daughters alive through my parents. But what Amanda and my parents failed to understand is that their actions weren't justified. They betrayed me, manipulated my daughters, and lied for years. Forgiveness isn't on the table. The irony is almost poetic. Amanda gave up her rights, sneaking around to see our children as if it were a crime. All because Sean didn't want her to have any ties to her past. He was supposed to be her one true love. But now even that's gone. According to my parents, their marriage fell apart months ago. Sean apparently received a job offer in another city and told Amanda he was leaving, without her. They've been fighting ever since. Amanda wants to stay because she recently started working, and their son has started kindergarten here. Sean, on the other hand, isn't interested in being a family man anymore. He told her he wasn't willing to sacrifice his future and happiness just to make hers work. Their breakup was the tipping point for Amanda. My parents hoped this story would make me feel sorry for her, but all it did was give me a sense of poetic justice. Amanda made her choices, and now she's reaping the consequences. As for me, I've already spoken to my lawyer, and the restraining orders are in motion. I've also had a serious conversation with my daughters. I explained that they won't be seeing their grandparents or their mother again. It was hard to tell them that, but they seem to be handling it okay for now. We're also in therapy working through everything together. I know this isn't easy for them. It probably never has been, but I'm doing everything I can to make sure they feel safe and loved. This chapter is finally closing, and I'm ready to leave it all behind. Update 2. Amanda and my parents have officially received notices of the restraining orders, and the court date is set for a few days from now. I have no idea how they're reacting because I've blocked them on every possible platform. I've also asked my friends to avoid communicating with them if they try to reach out. In the meantime, I've taken additional steps to ensure my family's safety. I've beefed up security around the house and have been working from home for the past few days to stay close to my daughters. I also contacted their school and explained the situation. Initially, I considered keeping them home for a while, but I didn't want their education to suffer because of Amanda and my parents. Now, the school staff is fully aware and on high alert. They've assured me that no one except me will be allowed to pick up my daughters after school. Knowing that extra layer of protection is in place gives me some peace of mind, but I'm still vigilant. I'm certain Amanda and my parents will try to contact us again, so I'm doing everything I can to make sure they can't. So far, things are going smoothly, and I'm hopeful that after the restraining orders are finalized, they'll be forced to stay away for good. Update 3. We got the restraining orders. For the next 5 years, Amanda and my parents are legally required to stay away from me and my daughters. If they violate the order, they'll face serious consequences. Even with the orders in place, I'm keeping all the security measures I've implemented. The last time I saw them, they looked furious, and I refuse to take any risks when it comes to my daughter's safety. On a positive note, my daughters and I are attending family counseling regularly, and I'm already seeing significant progress. We've come a long way, and I truly believe the next few months will bring even more healing. At this point, my only priority is my daughter's happiness. Seeing them smile and feel secure again is all I want, and for now, that's enough for me. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like.